Trump is plotting these big events? Even if you're not in the US, since Trump took office, the risk of losing your job could strike at any moment. This isn't an exaggeration. It's far easier to imagine than you might think, because this time, it's not just your company deciding how many employees can stay. It's the entire United States determining how many businesses in your region can survive. You might assume the sky won't collapse on us, so international events like these may still feel distant and wugan to you. But if you're caught off guard, you could face job loss, empty pockets, and the inability to pay off your house or car loans. These might seem like minor problems, because we're on the brink of facing one of the most formidable US presidents in decades. Greetings from FortuneCraft, ladies and gentlemen. Most people see that Trump has won the election, but few realize that he and the Republican Party have also secured majorities in both the Senate and the House. What does this mean? Simply put, for the next 4 years, unless internal party conflicts arise, Trump essentially has full control over the US government. His plans will shape the market and create money-making opportunities. For instance, Trump supports Elon Musk. Before the election, we suggested keeping an eye on Tesla. Just days after the election, Tesla's stock soared by 40%. But that's not the main point. The real story is that within 5 days, over $2 trillion poured into the stock market. Investors worldwide seem to be racing to bet on stocks that will thrive under Trump's policies. In reality, though, they're also betting that other regions will suffer tremendously. Most of Trump's proposed policies will fuel inflation. I won't bore you with the details, but here's a simple example. Trump wants to deport undocumented immigrants. That means the tough, low-paying jobs they often do will lack workers. American wages are high. If you don't believe me, try eating out in the US. You'll need to tip. Jobs once done cheaply by immigrants will now sit empty. Businesses will have to hire American workers, but at much higher costs. When expenses climb, the prices of goods and services must rise too. If they don't, profits vanish, and companies might shut down. This triggers inflation. Everything gets pricier. But the trouble doesn't end there. Trump's second big push is to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. This means opening factories in the U.S. even though it's expensive, and hiring American workers. How will he pull this off? Here's an example. I wouldn't have thought to make this video if I hadn't read this news. Recently, reports surfaced that Elon Musk's SpaceX demanded its suppliers in Taiwan pull out of the region. What does this signal? To me, it's clear Trump has long favored pressuring China and Hong Kong. Since he launched the trade war, stock markets in China and Hong Kong have tanked over the past 4 years. You can easily find reports of China's unemployment rate spiking in recent years. It's still brutal there. I initially thought Trump would keep targeting nations threatening U.S. dominance, but now I see he's no longer the rookie he was 4 years ago. Back then, he sanctioned China to boost U.S. profits. Today, after 4 years of seasoning, his target isn't just 1 or 2 countries. It's the entire world. If the SpaceX story about forcing suppliers out of Taiwan is true and sets a trend, what happens next? If I were a business owner and my company was told to leave its current location, where would I go? Many might say Thailand or Vietnam, where costs are lower, but in the future those countries could land on Trump's sanction list too. If he's displeased, he might halt purchases of goods made in Vietnam. He's known to confront anyone who siphons business away from him to keep trading with the U.S. I'd have to relocate my factory again, driving costs even higher. So why not just move to the US from the start? Yes, labor and interest rates are steep there, but they offer generous incentives and subsidies for manufacturing, and those will only increase. If I join their fold, I won't fear future sanctions. Plus, with AI advancing fast, my factory won't need as many American workers, trimming labor costs. However, if I abandon my current location, some employees will lose their jobs, and planned hires will be scrapped, raising unemployment. As my company and others leave, the job pool in that society shrinks sharply, intensifying competition for work. Picture a market with 100 jobs and 100 graduates. Everything's balanced. But if my company, providing 20 of those jobs, departs, only 80 jobs remain. Now my 20 laid-off workers join the hunt, making it 120 people vying for 80 jobs. That leaves 40 people unemployed. Before taking office, Trump claimed Taiwan snatched nearly 100% of U.S. business opportunities and should pay a price. So, are these issues still relevant to us? If we let our hard-earned money sit idle without smart investing or planning, innocent people will become victims of this upheaval. I'm not here to advertise, but I genuinely hope you'll follow my channel and turn on notifications. Many critical videos, if you miss them now, will be useless by the time you catch up. If you're worried you'll watch, but not act, hit the like button. The video will save to your playlist, letting you revisit and take action anytime. First, we must understand what Trump's landslide victory means. It shows most Americans voted to topple the Democratic government. It's like picking a partner. If you're fickle and chase the shiny new thing, you'd choose a prettier, richer girlfriend, right? Or if you're loyal, you'd stick with your current one. But if you reject both the new and the current and return to an ex, what does that say? It reveals Americans were unhappy with Biden's administration over the past 4 years. Otherwise, why re-elect a president they once booted out? Many, including you and me, can see U.S. asset values soaring and the economy booming. But in truth, Americans use their ballots to signal that life hasn't been as rosy as it appears. These past 4 years, some still view Trump as just a businessman, tied to the stereotype of a money chaser. But I believe, after 4 years out of power, he's evolved into a true politician. What's the difference? 4 years ago, as a businessman, his aim was profit for himself and the nation. Now as a politician, his goal is power. Power from votes, and votes from the people. If Trump wants his family to keep ruling America, he must satisfy voters. One way is by targeting the wealthy and redistributing wealth, starting with tax cuts for U.S. businesses. You might wonder, how are tax cuts targeting the rich? Shouldn't it be tax hikes? Think again. Do the rich need tax cuts? Trump's been accused of tax evasion, and even Warren Buffett said he pays less tax than his secretary. Tax cuts aren't about pleasing the rich, they're about reining them in. What do I mean? When you do business, to qualify for tax cuts, you must declare all income earned in the U.S. or abroad, and pay taxes in America. On the surface, it's a tax cut, but it's really a tax increase. Take Walmart. It has 78 subsidiaries in 15 tax haven countries, controlling $240 billion in assets. Their total reported assets are about $250 billion, meaning $240 billion sits in tax havens, where Walmart has no stores. They earn globally but stash profits there to dodge the U.S.'s nearly 50% tax rate, paying just 2% in havens. Now Trump says he'll slash taxes. Instead of 50%, you'll pay 25% or less, but you must bring all earnings back to the U.S. Before, You earned $100 and paid 22 abroad. Now you'll pay $25 in the US. It looks like a cut, but it's a hike. This shows Trump has traded a businessman's profit motive for a leader's pursuit of power. Business people backing him now have no choice but to comply, repatriating assets to pay U.S. taxes. He might toss them some perks, but for now, many U.S. billionaires have bolted. So what's the fix? Lure entrepreneurs from elsewhere to gradually shift their businesses to the U.S. I hope my fears are misplaced. If I were Trump, I'd mandate that tech firms reliant on the U.S. market open at least one factory in America to keep doing business here. Refuse, and I'd stop buying their goods or slap on 10%, 20%, even 50% import tariffs. Hasn't this happened before in history? Every nation has ways to shield its interests, just like Emperor Qin Shi Huang's father did centuries ago. When a company knows operating costs are high but still must set up in the U.S., isn't that wealth shifting from capitalists to American citizens? It creates jobs for Americans. That's redistribution. I'm no Trump fanboy. I'm a businessman and investor too. I've long read his books, watched his shows, and admired him. But now, he's cornered. Look at the U.S. Treasury's cash flow chart, which tracks the budget and reserves. What does it mean? In business, cash flow is king. Having enough to cover costs. Say you own a $10 million house with a $5 million mortgage. On paper, your assets outweigh your debt. No issue. But if you can't pay monthly installments, the bank will sell your house cheap. They'd reclaim their $5 million by unloading your $10 million home for $6 million. That's why cash reserves matter. If you need $1 million monthly to live, but earn only $500, $1,000, or barely $1 million, the pressure's immense. Similarly, the U.S. government needs cash flow to function. When Trump first took office, the required cash reserve was $350 billion, already up from before. He sparked a trade war with China, slapped on tariffs, and raked it in, easing reserves by 2017. But this time, it's ballooned to $800 billion. Keeping the government running is now twice as tough as 4 years ago. Last time, he targeted just China. This time, even before inauguration, he's vowed to isolate the world. Global tariffs are just the start. If he truly pulls global businesses to the U.S., imagine the haul from land use, factory building, hiring, and more. Even if the U.S. offers subsidies and help relocating workers. Once those talents settle, marry, have kids, put down roots, they're locked in. They earn in the U.S. But long term, they spend there too. Meanwhile, your country loses talent, jobs dwindle, and can your economy still grow? This is what we must brace for over the next 4 years. People think U.S. manufacturing is weak, so the U.S. will force nations with strong manufacturing to hand over talent, tech, and jobs. Come, and they'll subsidize you. Resist, and they'll punish you. Those subsidies might last a year or two. Once you're there, you'll spend your life in their system. Often, it's not about your effort. It's about being subtly manipulated without noticing. Now, if we pretend otherwise and don't act, I can only wish you luck to take charge. First, we must spot trends. Second, we need a system, not just earning passively, but letting rules and cash flow work for us automatically. Invest in clear, strong, upward trends, and when we're wrong, cut losses with minimal risk. Finally, Trump's third challenge is the U.S. public debt crisis. Everyone knows America owes the world a fortune. By 2025, a massive chunk of that debt matures. How to pay it? The easiest way is inflation. Say you have $100 today. With 10% inflation, its real value drops to $90. If I owe you $100 and inflation hits 10%, I'd repay you just $90 in real terms. That's Trump's playbook. He said he'll cut rates, pump money, and print more. But if he does, the dollar will plummet. Who'll lend to the U.S. then? Who'll keep using the dollar? Everyone's saying Trump's presidency will tank the dollar, boosting gold as an alternative. You know it. I know it. Doesn't Trump, as America's leader, his thinking must be sharp. Don't assume you're smarter than him. He won't just print money blindly. After printing and letting the dollar dip, he'll find ways to prop it back up. Post-printing, the dollar weakens, and the U.S. pays debts with cheaper dollars. Once paid, they'll strengthen it again. How? The U.S. has long devalued other currencies to bolster the dollar. Even if the dollar dips, if other currencies crash harder, it still looks strong. Take South Korea. A Korean phone costs $1,000. The U.S. adds a 20% tariff, bumping it to $1,200. Then, they demand it use U.S.-made parts, 20% pricier than alternatives. To profit, Korea must sell it for $1,300 in the U.S. Meanwhile, an Apple phone stays at $1,200. Buyers see the Korean phone costs $300 more and pick Apple. Korea, poised to profit in the U.S. maintain, now loses. Its economy weakens, its currency drops. As the won falls, Korea pays more for U.S. Minbits parts, pushing that phone's price higher. If you're Korean, you once worked a month for a phone, now it's a month and a half. You work harder, but your living standard stalls, just maintains. Korea's currency devalues, sparking local inflation. When Korean firms' profits shrink, they cut wages or jobs. Meanwhile, U.S. goods get cheaper for Koreans, and the U.S. buys Korean goods on the cheap. America's inflation magically shifts to Korea, harvesting Korean wealth. See? Trump did this to China before, but China adapted with countermeasures. Now, he's going global. In the coming years, many will toil harder for less as prices soar. Some might ask, didn't you say Trump's presidency would weaken the dollar, making gold rise? Has Trump fully taken office yet? Has he unleashed massive money printing? He's won, but it's months before he's sworn in. If you're Biden and the Democrats, would you sit still? No. You'd use the remaining time to sabotage Trump, set traps for his term, and prep for the next election. That's evident in gold prices crashing and the dollar surging recently. Trump's now in, and though he hasn't announced loose monetary policy, the dollar's dipped and gold spiked. But if the dollar falls from a peak, the drop hits harder. Plus, Biden's team tricked the world into selling U.S. stocks and buying U.S. bonds. Had Democrats won, they'd have managed bond sales. Now they've lost. They don't care if buyers vanish. They've tanked bond prices. Though the U.S. cut rates, bond yields rose, showing U.S. bonds are less appealing and tough to sell. They've planted a bomb. Now we wait to see if Trump defuses it or steps on it. Many invest on instinct, without clear rules, like hunting a needle in a haystack among thousands of stocks. It wastes time and leads to buying flops that lose value or briefly spike, then crash. So, choosing stocks, with a system is key. Due to time constraints, I'll stop here. I always share free insights on building wealth, entrepreneurship, investing, and financial freedom. Don't miss out. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video. I genuinely wish those who like it achieve financial freedom soon. If you find 1 or 2 tips here to live better, I'm content. I'm FortuneCraft, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.